here we at Hawk Forge. Today we're working on a 1999 Honda Recon 250. The issue with this ATV is the rear brakes are seized up and don't work. This is a friend of mine's. I saw him a couple years ago. He told me it's the most dependable vehicle that he owns. So let's get started. We're going to show you what's wrong with it and how. Okay, first thing we're going to need to jack the vehicle up, and I've got a block of wood, and you're going to need to jack this thing up from the front portion of the swing arm. I don't know if you can see that. So that you can access the brakes. You're going to have to remove the rear wheels, and you're going to also have to remove this skid plate to be able to access this. Go ahead and spray some WD-40 on these so that they come off a little bit easier. So you have to remove this and the hubs. I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Okay, first thing we're going to do is remove the wheels so that we can access what we need. Okay, I'm going to need to take this castle nut off, moving this pin right here. Okay, once you get the pin out, this Carter key pin, from here you're going to need a 30mm socket to remove this. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, once you get these hubs off, you're going to need to remove these wing nuts. And be careful of these things. If they won't come off, try not to break these ears off, because they will break off pretty easily. Spray them with WD, whatever you have to do. You can hold them right here with a small wrench. I think that's a 7 or 8mm. If you can't get these off easily, heat them up maybe just a little bit. And take these off. We're going to use a 10mm to take this arm off. And you're going to need a 12mm for these bolts in the housing, and to remove your skid plate. Get these off and out of the way. Okay, so we're going to take off skid plate bolt here. There's one here, and there's one around here on the other side, right here. You're going to need to take these off to be able to get your skid plate off. Okay, once you get these bolts out, they should come off pretty easy, and it's full of crud. Okay, now we've got that out of the way, we're going to want to get this bolt off right here. It's a 10mm. There's a spring in here that holds tension on this, and there is a lineup mark. I'm probably going to have to clean it up. You may be able to see what I'm talking about right here. And then there's a mark on this arm that match up when you put new brake shoes on. So let's take this off, and then we're going to take these off. Take this nut off right here. I'll show you how to do that. Okay, to get these axle nuts loose, you're going to need either a pipe wrench to go on the axle, or sometimes you can just use a pry bar to break these loose. And you just take these off, set them to the side. Get the axle nuts off and out of your way. There are two washers here. This washer, and it goes on a certain way. Let's see if I can show you. I don't know if you can see this on camera, but let's see if it'll focus. One side goes towards the differential and one side goes out, and I think it actually is marked on it. Once you clean it up, you can tell, but you can feel it which way it should go on there once you take it off. And then you're gonna take this washer off right here, large washer off. I already see some moisture. Then in here is a O-ring that you're going to want to get this O-ring out, and you may need to replace it. See if I can get it out of here so you guys can see it. There's an insert that goes in here that you'll have to get off, and this O-ring holds it in and seals any water, theoretically seals the water out. Trying not to damage it. Sometimes you don't have much choice. It gets stuck in there. And it's kind of an odd size O-ring, so you'll probably have to go to the Honda shop and buy one. You won't be able to just go to a local parts store and get a replacement for this. Okay, so once you get this thing out, it out of the way, then you can get this insert out. I'll show you that. Just work around it. It should come right out. Now, if I have seen these things so cruded up in here that you can't hardly get any of this stuff apart. I mean, it is just terrible, terrible. So once you get this out, then I'll show you what's next. Okay, so we finally got this thing out. You got to be really careful getting this out from here, and it can be rusted in here and be a real pain to get out. This one wasn't too bad. You've got to be careful and not damage your threads when you're trying to work this thing out here. And this piece, the seal, I Axle seal runs in here, and this is where your O-ring sits. You can see the shiny part where the O-ring sits, and that's supposed to seal out the water. Be sure and put this back. I've seen so many of these Recons, people just don't even put these back in there, and then it's just a mess, and water just gets in there if you ride through dew on the ground. So be sure and clean this up and put this back in. Alright, so we're going to remove these bolts here and here. There's 5 bolts. You're going to get these out of the way so that you can get this off into your, and you'll be able to access your brake shoes. Okay, now that you've got your bolts taken out, these were 12mm bolts heads. You're going to want to try to take this cover off, and you need to be careful. There's a slot here you can put a screwdriver in and prise it to try to pry that open a little bit. You need to be careful with this. It's thin, it will break and chip out. Same way here, you can tap it right here, but be careful. You don't want to break this off. So you just need to work it really easy. Just tap on it. Get it broke loose. This is a brass hammer, and you need to be extremely careful when you do this. Yeah, now there we go. Should be able to get that off. And just as I suspected, it's full of water. Doesn't want to come off. Okay, so I was finally able to get this thing loose, and you can see the brake shoes look perfectly fine. They're not really worn, but they are wet. And sometimes they can be a real pain to get out of this brake drum here. Looks like this brake drum has got water in it and it's rusted, and sometimes it's really hard to get your brake shoes out of this. You got to be careful not to damage anything when you're doing this. Should be able to just pull this brake drum off. That's not always true. I actually was the one that rebuilt this rear end a couple of years ago, and so I put anti-seize everywhere, did everything the right way. So even though it's got water in it, it hadn't really rusted and seized up yet. So you can pull this off. Set that to the side, and then you're going to want to tap on the other side the axle. You want to reinstall the axle nut over here on this side. Just enough to be able to tap on it with a block of wood. Either put a block of wood here and hit it, or a brass hammer. I've got a hammer here. And you're going to tap this axle out. There it goes. Be very careful not to damage your castle nut. Definitely not your axle. Take that off. Then you can pull your axle out. On this side, there's also a O-ring right here. When you reinstall this, be sure this O-ring is in here. It helps prevent water from coming in that side of the axle and getting the inside of here. Just put this thing out. Just like that. I'm going to clean all this stuff up, and I'm going to show you what the issue is with this. Alright, after we removed all that stuff from the axle, you're going to need to take this off. If your pedal is like this one, is stuck. So there is a, see if you can see, a pin here and a washer. You're going to need to take your brake cable loose. Take that out. Get that out of the way. And this spring off. Take this from the back side. I don't know if you can see the way it's hooked in there. And sometimes you can spray WD-40 in here, spray in behind this area right here, and this area here, and maybe tap this with a hammer, work it up and down, and you may be able to get this loose. What we're going to do is we're going to take this off and put anti-seize in here. Generally you put grease. I'm going to put anti-seize in here. Maybe that'll prevent this from happening again. The guy who owns this thing likes to ride in the water a lot, and that's the issue with the brakes, basically, is it they weren't designed to be submarines. So I was finally able to get this brake lever off of this post here. I've got a large pry bar, and you just got to spray it and work it back and forth. Be careful not to damage this. Try not to hit this. When you get it off, you can see it's rusted up, and there's a little groove in here that grease is supposed to sit in, right in that area. So you're going to want to clean this up, and you're going to want to clean inside of this brake lever up. Now there is, think you can see right here, there is a seal that goes on this side and a seal that goes on this side that's supposed to keep the water out and the grease in. You may want to take those out before you put sandpaper or wire, whatever it is you use. You can take these out, put them back in. Sometimes I have had to actually heat these up with a torch to get these off. Be extremely careful if you do that. Alright, thank you guys for watching. Be sure and hit the like and subscribe button, and stay tuned for part 2 of how to repair the brakes on your Honda Recon. Thank you. God bless. See you next time.